Hey Falcons, I have another math lesson for you today, so let's dive right in. So last time I was with you, we talked about how to find fractions on a number line that were less than 1. Today we're going to expand that to find fractions that are more than 1. But to begin, let's look at our math message for today. It says the red fraction circle piece represents one whole apple, and use a pink fraction circle piece to show 1/2 of an apple, 2/2 of an apple, and 3/2 of an apple. You may be confused here saying, Mr. Allen, how is there 3/2? When I cut an apple in half, there's only 2. Well, in this case, I have 3/2, and I'll show you how we do that here in a second. Notice that I have my red fraction piece up here. That represented one whole apple, remember? And each pink section is going to represent 1/2 of an apple. So there's my first one. There is 1/2 of an apple. Okay? So the next one said that we needed 2/2. There's our 2/2, but watch what happens when I flip this one around. And I put it closer to my other half. I then have one whole. So 2/2 of an apple equals one whole. You probably already knew that. Here's where it gets a little trickier. Everybody's like, wait, Mr. Allen, I have 2/2. That's a whole. It said to find 3/2. Can I do it? Absolutely, there's 3/2. It didn't tell me that I only had one apple to work with. I have to have more than one apple to get 3/2. I have to have two apples, matter of fact. Where the other half of that apple went, I don't know. But we have 3/2 represented here. Okay, on this number line, we have number line A. Notice that we have one whole unit between 0 and 1 representative here. We also notice that they've cut these into 3 equal spots. 1, 2, and 3. So we know that this is in thirds. Now, if I was to find this dot right here, I'm going to move my arrow there. What would that dot represent? Well, if these are in thirds, we know this is 0/3, 1/3, and 2/3. If you remember, that dot would be right on 2/3 from last week's lesson. Notice on my number line B that we no longer have one unit, but we have 2 units representative on this whole number line. So we go through and we say, just in one section, how many times was it cut? Well, in this case, it was cut twice, 1, 2, to make the whole. So therefore, we are going to know that this is in halves, or twos. So the book wants us to find what 3/2 would be, just like in our apple one. We could start at 0/2, 1/2, 2/2, or a whole, and then 3/2. And there we have it. The dot on the line would be 3/2, or 1 and 1/2. On this number line, we see that it has 2 units represented as well, but this time they've cut the units into fourths. 1, 2, 3, 4. So each one has 4 sections in it. Our first dot on the number line lands right here before 1 or to the left of 1. So we know that it is less than 1, and that would be 0/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. That line would be 3/4. I move it over here to this dot, and this point in the line is to the right of 1, so we know that it is greater than 1 or bigger than 1. In this case, we're still counting by fourths, so 0/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4 would be where we land. 5/4 would be the answer there. Okay, so on this next number line, I've already gone through and I've added the fourths. Even after the 1, we consider this still in fourths because we're looking at those individual units. Remember that, because a lot of times third graders get confused and say, oh, but there's 8 sections. Yes, there is 8 sections, but between 0 and 1, there's only 4, and we have to continue to keep that separation equal each time. So I've also gone through and changed the numerators at the top to reflect what our number line should be. If you need a review of how to do that, you could look back at our video from last week. Okay, so it says, what is the missing point here? Well, we see that the point is right here at our 3/4 mark. So we're going to write 3/4 right here. Okay, and through the magic of editing, I did this one as well. This time we're looking at 6th, 0, 6th, 1, 6, 2, 6, 3, 6, 4, 6, 5, 6, 6, 6, which is a whole. Remember, anything over itself is a whole. Notice now that the numerator is bigger than the denominator, so we know that it is more than 1. It is also to the right, so it means that it's greater than as well. 7 sixths, 8 sixths, 9 sixths, 10 sixths, 11 sixths, and 12 sixths. Our dot on the line that we're supposed to find is right here, which we see is 7 sixths. Let's move on. So let's move on to our home link. Here you see that we're supposed to fill in those missing numbers and then name the fraction of the point that is right here on our number line. We're going from 0 to 1, so it's 1 unit. And we see here by the denominator on the bottom that we are dividing this into 3 equal spots or thirds. So we have 0 thirds already here. Let's find the next one. It would be 1/3. 1 goes after 0, right? Next would be, you guessed it, 2/3. And then 3/3 would be our whole. Right here is our number on our number line, or point that we're supposed to find. So we know that that is 2/3. And once again, I want to remind you that the denominator is bigger than the numerator here. So it is less than 1. It is also to the left on the number line, showing that it is smaller than the number 1. Okay, here we go again. We have 2 units represented this time. We are looking at 1 unit. How many times did they break it apart? 1, 2, 3 times. So we're putting 3 as our denominator, or the bottom number. We start with 0 thirds. The next one would be 1/3, 2 thirds, 3 thirds, 4 thirds, 5 thirds. And then our last one is 6 thirds. Easy enough. Here is our point on the line that we're supposed to find. So we say that it's 1, or it's asking us for the fraction. And in this case, it's 3/3, or 3 thirds. Moving on. Okay, on this one, we're looking for the same things. We have to fill in the missing numbers and then find the point on the line, which is right here. We see that there's 2 numbers or units represented here. We're going to focus on 1 at a time. We see that they break them into 6 equal groups. So our denominator at the bottom is 6 all the way across, no matter what unit we're on. So let's go ahead and begin. So we have 0, 6 already there. Now we're going to add 1/6, 2, 6, 3/6, 4/6. Next is 5/6, 6/6, or a whole. They've already given us that one. 7/6, 8/6, 9/6, 10/6, 11/6, and 12/6. Remember, after the 1, our numerators are now bigger than the denominators, and our point actually is past that. So our point lands on 9/6. So I'm coming down here, putting that on our line. 9/6. 9/6. And since it's bigger, the numerator is bigger than the denominator. We know that it is greater than 1. Plus, it's on the right side of the 1 in our number line. Okay, our last question here is asking us to look back at the last 3 that we've done and name the point that is greater than 1. The only fraction that was greater than 1 was the last one we did, because the numerator was indeed bigger than the denominator, or the top number was bigger than the bottom. And if you remember, that was 9/6, or 9/6. What we have today is just a review of addition and subtraction in 3-digit numbers. So we're going to start off with the subtraction right here. So we're going to come over and we're going to put them above each other like normal, because I feel like it's easier that way. 549. And we're subtracting 289 from that. Remember, at any time, if I have a bottom number that is bigger, I must borrow. Bottom bigger, borrow. 9 minus 9 is 0. 4 minus 8, there's that bottom bigger borrow thing. So I have to come over here, grab a group from there. Remember, we're grabbing a group of 100 in this case, and we're putting it at the tens. But really, you're just grabbing a group of 10, so that now becomes 14. 14 minus 8 is 6. And 4 minus 2 is 2. So our answer is 260. Write that in our box over here. Our last question is an addition question, so it's 739. And we're adding to it 261. Let me write that here. Okay, we're going to do a lot of carrying with this one, so let's watch. 10 plus 1, or 9 plus 1, sorry, gave that away, didn't I, is 10. I'm going to put my 0 for my 1s, and I'm going to carry my 10 up above. Put it in the tens category. So now I have 3 plus 6 is 9. 9 plus 1, you guessed it, it's 10 again. We're going to put the 0 here, carry my 1. 7 plus 2 is 9. I have the 1 again. That is 10. This time I do not have to carry it, because I could just write it. There's no other spot. 1 plus 0 would have been 1 as well. So my answer here is 1,000. 739 is equal to, or 739, sorry, plus 261 is equal to 1,000. Great. And that does it for today's lesson. Today I challenge you to take pieces of paper, put numbers on them, and make fractions of your own. Tell me whether they are more than 1 or less than 1. And as always, remember, you are smart, you are kind, you are important, and you are loved. Have a fabulous day, Falcons.